Lakeland Currents, your public affairs program for north central Minnesota. Production funding for Lakeland Currents is made possible by Bemidji Regional Airport, serving the region with daily flights to Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. More information available at bemidjiairport.org. Closed captioning for Lakeland Currents is sponsored by Nisswa Tax Service, tax preparation for businesses and individuals. Online at nisswatax.com.
Hello again, friends. I'm Jason Edens, your host of Lakeland Currents. Thanks for joining the conversation today, and thanks for your ongoing support of Lakeland Public Broadcasting. On any given night, nearly 10,000 Minnesotans experience homelessness, many of whom experience it night after night. Yet this is not breaking news. Homelessness has been an issue for a very long time. And this really begs the question, can we actually eradicate homelessness in our region? If so, how so? Here to help us better understand housing security in our region and a unique approach in Brainerd is my guest, Vicki Jo Kinney, founder of My Neighbor to Love Coalition. Vicki, welcome to the program and thanks for making time for our conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Well, first of all, to what extent is homelessness an issue here in the Brainerd Lakes area?
It's a major extent. I think people don't realize how many people are sleeping outside in encampment areas. And just, it used to be sleeping in apartments, stairwells and whatnot, but with the warming shelter open this last year, that's helped quite a bit. I think there was about just under 800 nights of sleeping. So some people, I think one person was there 120 nights, but on average, so that many nights somebody would have been outside sleeping in encampment areas.
And what is the warming shelter that you just mentioned?
The warming shelter was started just this year as a kind of a pilot program. It looks like it's will be running another year. So it's in South Brainerd, and it's not part of our organization, but we're really thrilled to be able to have it. So it was opened up in, I think it was December, and closed its doors at the end of April. So it's just for seasonal, yes.
Okay.
So we're grateful for that.
It's a seasonal homeless shelter here in Brainerd.
Right, yep, just brand new this year.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, in the Brainerd Lakes area, of course, there are many organizations that are working on housing security.
Right.
Habitat for Humanity,
Yes,
Housing
yeah.
and Redevelopment Authority,
Yeah.
Lutheran Social Services, Salvation Army. What is unique about My Neighbor to Love Coalition? Your approach?
Sure. It's more of a combination of a lot of services with housing. So we're not just looking at just the housing piece. Housing First was started in 1990s under Phil Mangano, under President Bush, and then later a little bit under Obama. And the idea was the costs for the taxpayers to have somebody be homeless, using emergency health services or court expenses and law enforcement, it averaged between $35,000 to $150,000 per year per person. So to cost to taxpayers. And so the idea was we could take that money, instead put people in housing, and then the cost will go down. And they did dramatically go down by at least $20,000 per person. But they're finding over years that it's not enough. Just putting people in housing doesn't solve the problem. For some people just don't want to stay. They're isolated and lonely, and it is not really helping with some of the mental health issues. It doesn't help with getting people back into a dignified life. So what we're proposing is, of course, the affordable housing piece. People need housing, so we're so grateful that for Habitat and for all these different places of trying to get more housing, but there's a shortage, a desperate need for housing in the Brainerd Lakes area. And especially a housing that people can afford. Rent is quite high, as you know, and properties are continuing to go up. And hopefully that'll slow down soon. So what we're proposing is looking at each individual person, looking at the root causes. So what contributed to the homelessness or extreme poverty? Taking a look at that, providing the homes for them, and then the services and the help to get them back into the workforce to address whatever those issues are.
So in addition to the housing, you're also going to be offering us this constellation of wraparound services for the tenants. Is that right?
That's right, yep.
And what exactly is the housing solution itself? Where are you building homes? What type of homes? Are you doing this in partnership with other organizations?
No, not at this point. Our plan is to build, we're focusing on tiny homes, but they're not that tiny. They're a little over 400 square feet. We'll also be doing some family homes that'll be a little bit larger, like 500 plus square feet, just because you can't fit a family in a 400 square foot home. It's just, you go crazy. So we're looking at doing some fourplexes or possibly sixplexes. And building more of a community. So we'll have community gardens, we'll have common areas, a playground for the children. So the idea is not just housing and I guess I would describe it as a three-legged stool. So we've got the first leg is home, and that is people need to have a safe place to live before they can address some of those other issues. You can't be just trying to get your primary needs met and try to think about getting a job and other. It'd be impossible. You need an address. The next area is health, and that would be our wraparound services with mental health, financial health, relationship health. Some people can get a job but just can't keep a job just because of not knowing how to communicate and relate with other people. So it's looking at all of the physical health, all those issues with the person. And then the last leg of that three-legged stool we call harmony, and that's that peaceful coexistence, that sense of community. And that's, I think, the piece that's missing with a lot of other supportive type housing communities, is that sense of belonging, that we're neighbors and we look out for each other and we care about each other, and if something's going on and you're having trouble, what can we do to help? So it's instilling that value of each individual, that everybody has worth. So that's the goal of My Neighbor to Love Coalition, is creating a community, a village that provides all of that.
Well, I want to ask you about the tiny homes,
Sure.
but I'm also curious about the origin of the name of the organization. Can you explain that for us?
I certainly can. Well, to be really honest, it was not our first choice of names, but we knew we wanted a name that would have a website. And so, boy, there's not very many names left out there. So we tried, and we were actually quite happy when we came across this name. It's based on the My Neighbor to Love it's about personal responsibility. It's not your neighbor to love. It's not your problem. It's mine. And it comes from the story in the Bible of the Good Samaritan, when Jesus was telling him about the greatest commandment, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And then he was asked, like, well, who's exactly is my neighbor? Maybe trying to get out of a little bit. And then he told the story of the Good Samaritan, and it was the person that got robbed and beaten and stripped, laying on the side of the road, and it was that Good Samaritan that came along and helped, and that's the good neighbor. And then Jesus says, go and do the same. And so for us, the name is meaningful because we're looking at people that have been stripped of their dignity. Maybe robbed, they've had maybe some bad experiences in their life, that robbed of self-worth, and so we want to be the neighbors that can come along and lift people back up and get them back on their feet and back into their life.
So it's a faith-based organization?
It is a faith-based organization. Yeah, you don't have to be a Christian or follower to be part of the coalition, but you'd have to know that our values are faith-based and that each person has immense worth.
It's faith-based, but it's also a private nonprofit organization.
That's right.
Is that right?
Yep, a 501c3 nonprofit.
So why tiny homes?
Practical. I mean, because, well, I guess there's a couple reasons. Because some people say, well, why not apartment buildings? Why not just pack everybody in there? And we've all seen the projects and how those turn out. We find that some people that have had some experiences with past trauma, maybe have some mental health issues and concerns, to have that much wall space, next, below you, above you, it can feel very closed in and also very isolating. You hear noise and you look out. You look out maybe your back window, but you look out into a hallway in your door. It's not as inviting. So when you have that space around you, that green space, and you look out your window and you look out your front porch, and you see people, and it's sort of it helps with that community feel. So it's maybe more financially practical to build apartment buildings, but we feel like for the health part of it and that sense of community, we wanted it to be a neighborhood feel. And so the tiny homes together with the green space around them and front porches on every unit, so that also invites that sense of community and walking by and visiting. And
Sure. So for our viewers that are familiar with the Brainerd Lakes area and Brainerd specifically, where exactly will this project be built?
Okay. Our very first, we've got 3 separate lot areas just between 4th and 3rd and 3rd and 2nd Street, north of James Street, and then two lots north of Jackson. So we'll be building, hopefully this summer, we'll be building our model home so that we can give people tours of what this is going to look like, and as we start our home sponsorship campaign. So hoping to do that very soon. And then the first community that we'll be building will be between 2nd and 3rd Street. So for those who know Brainerd Lakes area, it's by the communities, the the Civic Center, north of the Walgreens Tyrell Hill shopping area.
Yeah, it's literally a stone's throw from where we're
It
having
really
this
is.
conversation.
Yep, it is.
So do you currently own this property?
We do. We have 9 acres.
Okay.
Well, probably about 6 or 7 acres are buildable. So there's some floodplain areas that are unbuildable, and it's quite hilly terrain. So we have our work cut out for us.
And when did you acquire this property?
This would have been, I believe, in November.
In November.
That is when we made the purchase agreement.
Which is shortly after you started the organization, correct?
That's right, yes. We looked for land and we approached many cities looking for some property, and that was very challenging.
You approached multiple cities.
We did. We looked for land everywhere we possibly could. It's difficult with zoning, from first assessment to different communities. The zoning laws are different, and the availability, and then looking for the amount of property that we would need, and then infrastructure and expenses. So we and then of course a lot of cities, like Pequot and a few other ones, they made very clear that they didn't really want tiny home developments. I think it's new for some people.
If I'm not mistaken, those 9 acres are right along the Mississippi River, correct?
We have 1 acre on the Mississippi River, but the rest of the acreage is not on the river, no.
And why was this property not yet, quote unquote, developed?
It was owned by the Gustafson Properties, and I think they tried to develop, I think maybe storage buildings, I think at one time, and I think he had some ideas of developing it, but things just didn't go through, and so it was just sitting there. So it got to the point where I was looking at the GIS mapping system pretty much every day and just scouring the community and like, where's a piece of property? And I found it, and it was undeveloped, and I tracked down the owner of it and just called him up and told him what we'd like to do. And said, would you be interested in selling to us? Because it wasn't listed. And he said, yeah, I think that'd be a great idea.
Interesting.
So, yeah. So
do you know the history of the land use there?
I really don't. I know at one point there wasn't a homeless encampment on the property.
Oh,
so
right?
there's still a little bit of debris left over from that. But
okay. And where are you in the stage of getting this project permitted, for example? Do you have the authorization from the city of Brainerd to build this project at this point?
We really don't need any authorization because we own the land. We would like to replat some of the lots, but we are planning on moving ahead with just over-the-counter permits. So we're able to just build one home at a time. We'd like to start with some 4-plexes. We'd love 6-plexes, but we're prepared for 4-plexes. With 6-plex, we need a conditional use permit.
And are you encountering any headwinds from the community, or is the community generally supportive of this? You said that you experienced some resistance elsewhere, Pequot specifically.
Yeah.
Are you experiencing similar resistance or headwinds here in the Brainerd community?
I would say that the neighbors have been great. So we invited all the neighbors in Tyrell Hills to talk with us and share their concerns and those kind of things. And we've had really basically no pushback at all from the neighbors. Oftentimes in this kind of situation, there's fear, and then not a NIMBY and not in my backyard campaign.
Sure.
And we were concerned about that. But the Tyrell residents, even though they probably have some concerns, I would think so because they're it's a new idea, a new project, but they've not expressed any, and they've not put any roadblocks. They've not come to any of the public hearing meetings and protested it. So it's been great. We've had some pushback from the city council and the planning commission. I think some of them have been really great. I think some of them have some fears about what we're building and what it's going to look like.
Can you summarize what those fears would be?
I think, one of the issues I believe is they'd like to see more dense housing, maybe more apartment buildings and that kind of workforce housing on this property, which I understand Brainerd does need housing, but we also need housing for a certain population that is being overlooked and ignored, and that's our role.
And with 6 to 7 acres that are buildable, is that correct? 6 to 7 acres? How many units can you build?
Well, right now we're just looking at the 1 block, and we potentially could build up to 20 units if we can get some conditional use permits for 6-plexes. It's a very cool design, but I can't show you yet. It's still being worked on. Otherwise, we're looking at probably like 20 to 24 units.
In total?
Just in the first block, and then
First
we have
block.
two other block areas that we can. I would say probably close to 50 altogether.
So once you accomplish your mission and build out these 6 to 7 acres, how many folks that are experiencing housing insecurity will have a home?
I would say, households, because some of them will be families, but I would say households, we would have probably at least 50 was our goal. And we may consider more densing housing between 4th and 3rd Street, so it could be higher than that.
And how will you select the tenants, or how will the tenants find you? How does that process work?
We've already been meeting with a lot of the people that are experiencing homelessness in the community and forming relationships and getting to know them, and just as we want them to be involved too and hear what their needs are and what they'd like to see in the community as well. So we have an application process that we've already started. We're working on our handbook. It's not just going to be anybody that wants to. It'll have to be somebody that is proving that they are either experiencing homelessness or have some housing insecurity, and they have to want to live in community. That's probably the two, I guess, hallmarks. So we're low barrier in that you can still be struggling with addiction. You can be a felon. You can have that on your background. We're not concerned about that. If there's some violent criminal behavior in the background, then we can't allow that just for the safety of the residents. But
So formerly incarcerated individuals can certainly apply.
sure, yeah,
Folks don't need to be sober to apply.
right.
I know that some housing initiatives require the tenants to be sober, but that's
Right.
not part of
No,
your
that's not-
application
no.
process. Now, is that a result of the fact that you have these additional wraparound services that will address that?
Yeah, I think that is. We want people to be, again, it's about dignity. And we want people to have hope again. And I think when you've been beaten down for as long as some of these people have, it's hard to imagine, it's hard to dream again. So we want to be able to provide that. Alan Green from Community First, Austin, Texas, he talks about some people need a longer runway, and that's what we want to provide. So we want to be able to give them enough time and enough support and help so that they can start dreaming again and get back into the workforce and maybe even do some micro enterprise businesses on site.
One more question about the tenants.
Sure.
You said that you're already meeting with some potential tenants.
Yes, yeah.
And how are you identifying those potential tenants? Where are you finding them?
Sure. People that are experiencing homelessness are in Brainerd, and so sometimes going to the soup kitchen, sharing bread. Our place has been great with Northern Pines. Some people, while in the cold, would go there and visit, and they've been just really great to meet with and.
So this model with the tiny homes,
Yes.
with a number of different units, where has this proved successful elsewhere in the country?
That's a good question, and that's where the Community First is the model that we found. We researched for about a little over 2 years, looking at what does work, what doesn't work, and there's all kinds of solutions throughout the country, and it's unique to each probably demographic and area of the country. But when we came across Community First, it had everything. It checked all of our boxes of what we were looking for. So the idea that people are valuable and that it's about community, not just about housing. And they also offer a lot of those same services. They're growing. They've been around for a long time now, and it's successful, and they keep developing and growing. Since then, Eden Village USA in Springfield adopted that same model to Springfield and also
Illinois?
Yeah, in Illinois, and also now in North Carolina, and I think they're looking at Tulsa. Branson, Elevate Branson is a similar project, same way. So they're starting to pop up throughout the country, but this would be the first in Minnesota of this type.
Of this type?
Yes.
So there are no precedents in Minnesota in terms of tiny homes that focus on community first, as you say.
That's
Is that
right. Yeah, there's a tiny home development in Duluth, but it's for profit. It's just for people that want to live in smaller homes. It has nothing to do with homeless population or anything.
Interesting.
But there are some developments in Minneapolis that are working on also very similar projects, working with tiny homes and community. I think Envision is one of them, and there's a few other ones as well. But I think we'll be the first in especially in this area, but I believe in Minnesota, to do the kind of project that we're doing. We're hoping that this will spread throughout the state. We'd love to be a beacon for the rest of Minnesota, where other towns could come and look and
And
see
would
how
you
to
lead
do
that
it.
charge?
I would love to see Minnesota end homelessness. Our goal is not to keep homeless people more comfortable. The idea is to end homelessness altogether, and that's our goal.
So after this first project here in Brainerd, you envision your organization doing something similar in other communities. Is that what I'm hearing you
I
say?
would say we probably wouldn't be taking on the charge, but we would be helping the other communities, show them the ropes, show them what to do and how it's done, and get them started and be a more of an advisor position to help them to duplicate the same thing that we're doing here.
Sure. Well, let's talk money.
Okay.
Securing, or I should say procuring 9 acres along the Mississippi River was probably not terribly inexpensive.
It
So
was-
how are you paying for this?
A generous donation. So we had a $400,000 donation to purchase the land, and then about just under $100,000 of city assessments for the road improvements. And so we still have that to pay, and we'll put on the taxes. So we've got a good start. So the land is paid for and clear and free. Our biggest fundraiser, and we won a few grants, which is great, and we'll continue to apply for grants and look for other funding sources as well. But
That's
it'll
the
be
land, right? Because you still have to build 50
Now
units.
it's time to build. Yep.
So
Yep.
how much will that cost?
We're looking at this point, probably about another $1.8 million altogether, because we'll be building not only just the tiny homes, but a community center. And in the community center will be staff offices, it will be meeting rooms for Celebrate Recovery and AA meetings, a big kitchen, couch area, library area, exercise room, and an art and crafts room. So we want it to be a gathering place where people can just kind of come and hang out and spend time together.
And that's part of the
those
community
services.
first ethos.
Yes, it is. Yep. And
Interesting.
we hope to do some micro enterprises down the road as well. So we're saving a couple lots for that as well for the future. But yes, our biggest fundraiser we anticipate, and what's proven successful in other states, is the sponsoring of the tiny homes. So encouraging businesses, groups of people, churches, organizations to get together and do their own fundraising, and then commit to building or having built one of the homes.
Do you have any commitments yet?
No, we haven't even started the fundraiser yet. So
Okay.
we're finishing the floor plans, and we're about ready to apply for a building permit probably within the next month or two.
So you mentioned staff. Who is going to be staffing this, and what are their jobs?
Yep, we're very low in staff because we're all volunteers, but we do want to hire a property manager and build an apartment for them to be able to live on site. And they'll just be making sure that rents, because all these units you have to pay rent, so it'll be low rent, but they'll be the ones just kind of making sure everything's running smoothly.
What happens if a tenant can't pay their rent?
Right. What we want to do is have enough funds set aside for looking at the cause of that. So was it a job loss? Was it a health issue? So we're not about booting people out because these are month-to-month leases, but it's looking at what happened, what can we do? And so if we can provide some jobs on site that people can then use for credits to be able to pay that rent for that month. So we're about helping people stay in housing. They can live there as long as they want, as long as they're good neighbors and can pay the minimum rent.
And if it's one of the 500 square foot tiny homes, what would the rent be?
Well, the smaller ones are 400 square feet. The single families will be 500.
I see.
We're exploring it right now. We'd like to keep the cost closer to $350 a month. So that's what we're looking at. But we're still looking at the numbers, but that's what we're hoping for.
And who's designing these?
Well, we have, as a team, I've mostly done some of the design work on them. So we're taking it to an architect now to do the blueprints.
I see. So you've done the design work. That's part of your background, is designing homes.
Well, it's more of a hobby.
Okay.
So yeah. So and they're small. It doesn't take a lot of creativity.
Sure.
Yeah.
And the building code and city ordinances are not a barrier to this project in any way, shape,
we're
or
following
form.
everything according to the city. Yep,
Interesting.
city ordinances. So.
Well, I'm also curious about how this model can address longer-term housing. According to the Aspen Institute, nearly 43 million Americans face eviction.
Yeah.
Is this the model or a model that can help address some longer-term housing insecurity issues nationally?
I think absolutely. The homes are easy to put up. They're very simple, roof lines, floor lines, and I know that some people can put them up in a matter of a few weeks if they get a team together to do them. So, and it shouldn't be. I know costs are a lot right now with building costs, but they're very, very easy to build and simple floor plans. So.
Well, how much does one cost?
We're still getting our bids in and
Sure.
looking at it, but we're anticipating if we do labor volunteer for the construction, we're looking at closer to around 50-55. And that would include the sewer hookup and flooring and appliances, and so it could be anywhere between $50,000 to $70,000 is what we're looking at.
And every unit will have access to city water and city
Yes,
sewer.
That's right.
I see. And do you think that you'll be able to fill these rapidly once they're built?
I think we'll have a waiting list.
Is that right?
It's going to be. I definitely think we'll have a waiting list. Just talking with not too long ago some of the social services agencies in the area. I think they had. I believe it was 50 people waiting right now. I think half of them were families, some were single, some are young adults aging out of the foster care system that were waiting for housing, applying for housing. And it can take us sometimes up to a year for somebody to get Section 8 housing. And there's many people that won't be able to get it because they don't qualify because of their backgrounds. So we're anticipating, and that's just one organization that has those on our waiting list. And there's many people that won't go into the coordinated entry system. They
Sure.
just have some, fears of social services and those kind of things. So we anticipate that we'll have a waiting list.
So in order to provide all these wraparound services, right, this constellation of wraparound services, are you partnering with county social services, or with whom are you partnering in order to provide that?
What we're hoping to do is looking at what's already being provided. And so some of the things that we'll be doing, we'll be hooking people up with what's already available. If there's a really good program already available that works for them, then we'll just be referring out. But we want to have as many services on site as possible, because even if there's a great program out there, we're hoping that they will bring that program to the community center, because people just won't utilize them.
Sure.
They just won't go and they won't show up. They don't even show up sometimes to sign up and do the paperwork, it could be overwhelming.
Right. So $350 a month, does that include utilities?
We have to do these all separately, so probably not including utilities.
Probably not.
But we're still exploring some of those details.
So Minnesota's cold. This winter is a great example of just how cold it can be and how long and grueling the winter can be.
Yeah.
How are you going to heat them?
Well, we're looking at whether they're going to do natural gas or electric, so we're still looking at some of those
So one of
options
those
too.
two.
One of those two, yeah.
Okay. And how can the community get involved? If someone's listening and getting excited about this model and wants to get involved, how can they get involved?
Contact us. We've got our website is www.mntlc.org.
My Neighbor to
Love
Love
Coalition. It's kind of easy to remember
Gotcha.
because it's also
Yep.
Minnesota Tender Loving Care.
Nice.
They can contact me. We've got our contact information on there. We'll be doing the sponsoring for homes coming soon. So if anybody wants to get involved with that, that would be great. We're always looking for volunteers. We'll be needing land clearing. There'll be gardens there. I mean, there's so many. We would like to match each resident up with a mentor, or just like a community advocate, just somebody that's kind of looking out for them, somebody they can call on. So people that want to get involved personally, we'd love that. People want to offer their education and skills. Do they want to help with job training or cooking classes? Or we really are going to have room for any volunteer that would like to help.
So
There'll be
potentially
many
scores and scores.
Scores and scores, yeah. And then down to the actual building,
Sure.
and landscaping and gardening, and so.
So
a lot
speaking of building, are
opportunities.
you going to hire someone to build them, or are you going to be building these with volunteer labor?
We are going to mostly build them with volunteer labor
that
in as
right?
much as we can. Habitat for Humanity has been great, and Kevin said that we will train your
Kevin
volunteers.
Pelkey.
Yes, yeah.
Interesting.
He said we will train your volunteers. So when it gets to that point, so we'll be looking for volunteers and anybody that has some skills.
So Vicki, what brought you to this work? What motivates you to do this work? Why did you start the organization?
We knew there was a need, and both my husband and I have people that are dear and close to us that have experienced homelessness, and we've seen the impact and the trauma that they've experienced. So it's just something that's very close to our hearts. My son, I wasn't going to even share this, but my son has been experiencing chronically homelessness for several years and mental health issues, and he recently passed. And we just,
sorry.
yeah, it's been rough. But we just really believe that what was missing in his world when he was living in Colorado, we're trying to create that here, so that other parents don't lose their children and siblings don't lose their brothers or sisters, because we want to build a community and a development that addresses all those needs and gets people back into a healthy and hopeful lifestyle.
Vicki, I want to thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you so much.
I really
I'm
appreciate
excited
it.
about what God's doing here. Thank you.
And thank all of you for joining me once again. You can continue the conversation on Twitter. Tweet me at CurrentsPBS. I'm Jason Edens, your host of Lakeland Currents. Be kind and be well. We'll see you next week.